It is getting more and more expensive to rent housing in Canada. A new report suggests that average rents have soared above $2,000 a month for the first time ever in the month of November. The costs were highest in Vancouver, followed by Toronto. Monthly rents for a one-bedroom apartment were more than $2,600 in Vancouver and more than $2,500 in Toronto. The report also suggests that the double-digit increases in rent costs show no sign of slowing. So, is there an end in sight for this housing crisis? To discuss, I'd like to bring in Paul Kershaw. He's a policy professor at the University of British Columbia and the founder of Generation Squeeze, an organization that advocates for future generations, including on affordable housing. And he joins us now from Pitt Meadows, British Columbia. So, Paul, what's behind these historic rental costs?
Well, the rental costs are driven in part by what's happening in the ownership market. And we know, as you've reported many times on your show before, that average home prices have gone up hundreds of thousands of dollars in our country, while earnings have actually stalled for young people and gone down. And as a result, you have many talented young people and newcomers of any age who are competing more and more and for longer periods of their lives for rental. And we're not just talking about more modest income young folks. We're talking about people with good jobs and lots of education, but they can't get into home ownership, so they bring their good jobs and education to compete more for rental, and that is pushing up the demand for rental, and as a result, rents rise. Simultaneously, we're struggling to build enough rental, especially purpose-built rental. And a lot of the new homes that we have been building, the census data tells us, have been bought by people who are existing owners like me. And then they buy this as an investment property, and then they rent it out to people who are younger or newcomers of any age. And so there's a constrained market on the supply for housing, while simultaneously there's this addiction for homeowners to see their assets go up in value, which then locks young people out to then push them to demanding for more rent.
All right, so what do young people, what do newcomers do if they can't buy and now they're being priced out of renting? There's not enough rental units on the market. I mean, what do they do?
Well, first, I hope they don't blame themselves. This is not a problem of the making of younger Canadians and people who are renting right now. This is a problem in the housing sector more generally, and it's actually homeowners like myself who need to increasingly lean in and say, we have empathy for the renters, and we want to show allegiance to the Canadian dream that a good home should be in reach for what hard work can earn, either as a renter or an owner or cooperative housing. And so owners are going to have to come to terms with saying, we don't want home values to continue to rise. It makes me wealthier. I got $500,000 in my Metro Vancouver home, a $500,000 increase just last year alone. That makes me wealthier, but it's horrible for the housing system and for people who are just as smart as me and just as hardworking as me, who are just younger than me. So we need to say, we don't want that any longer. And then people like me might be invited to say, how can we contribute to the solution going forward? How can we contribute both to investing in more purpose-built rental housing? How can we stop being NIMBYs and say no rental in my neighborhood? And how can we do a range of other policy issues that, a range of other policy tools that we need to pull in order to solve this problem, because there's no one single magic bullet. I know your listeners would wish there would be, but there isn't.
But Paul, so you're relying on the empathy of other investors like you, but I don't, it's good to hear you say that, but do governments have to become more involved in this? I mean, this seems like a crisis.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So absolutely. So governments, though, can do what they get political cover to do. And so it's the owners of the housing right now, myself included, who need to be saying, hey, we're okay if home prices stall or fall moderately over the next many years so that earnings have a chance to catch up, so that we can contribute potentially more. I own a home that's worth more than $1 million. I think I should be asked to contribute more in taxation so that some of my taxes can go to reducing income taxes for middle and lower earners, or invest in deeply affordable housing like rental and cooperative housing. But we need to send that signal to our decision makers. Our decision makers need to be brave and say, we don't want to grow this economy by continually growing the cost of housing, our major cost of living, higher and higher, and leaving earnings behind. If we don't have that cultural consensus, we will not be able to solve the rental unaffordability problem that we've created, the home ownership unaffordability problem that we've created, and the housing wealth inequalities that we have created.
Paul, appreciate you taking the time. Certainly hope it gets better. Thank you.
My pleasure. Have a great day.
Paul Kershaw is a policy professor at the University of British Columbia and the founder of Generation Squeeze. He joined us from Pitt Meadows, British Columbia.